Fortunate for me, I still get to spend about 6 months out of the year in the gorgeous majesty of the high Colorado Rockies. And I basically grew up here. I grew up in the South Metro Denver area where 80% of the population of the state resides. And anyone who grew up here knows that the mountains themselves are our greatest gift. As a teen, I'd have my teenage friends come pick me up, and 20 minutes later, we'd be hiking and bouldering around the foothills. And eventually, we got our own rock climbing equipment. But what I know now about these mountains, I'm sure glad nothing terrible happened. Because what I know now about these mountains, it seems like any chance you take with them, they will severely injure you or even kill you. It's not a plastic world out here. It's not a paved world. It's not a Barbie land world. It is beautiful, but keep in mind, anytime you seem to take a risk with these Colorado Rockies, these are our biggest mountains in the United States, our biggest mountain chain, going all the way up to Alaska, going all the way down to New Mexico, and even that spine, you could say, continues on to the Andes. So even down to South America, down to Chile. And, it's gorgeous. But at the same time, there's been 3 solo climbers that have fallen to their death alone in Rocky Mountain National Park when this video was made, summer 2023. So even though it's gorgeous, I found even a new lake at the beginning of the spring here. This is Cottonwood Lake, 20 minutes west of Buena Vista. It's teeming with trout. And I've been enjoying my inflatable K1 kayak. Only $80 on Amazon. Comes with everything you need. And at the end of each summer, I usually have a story. Last summer, I saw this, I guess it's called a mink. Here's a photo of what a Colorado mink looks like. And that's pretty much what it looked like, just a little bit smaller. I thought it was maybe like a baby Colorado river otter, or even like I don't know, it was great. It reminds me when my friend had a ferret from the 1990s, but it was really cute. That was the highlight of my last summer. This summer, I saw a moose in the spring in her calf, and the moose even put her snout in the water and pulled it out, so you get all the water coming down, kind of like the Canadian beer labels. So that was probably the highlight of my summer. It was going to be the highlight of my summer before I heard this weird story. Have any of you heard this weird story? It was kind of towards the beginning of the summer. It was 3 mummified campers found dead. And to me, it was just so weird because no one knew who they were. How does people become mummified, which means they're there for like 6-7 months over the winter? Like a person on Everest. I guess no cougars or bears got to them miraculously. And they were like in a mummified state. And to me, that's weird that no one knows who these people are. No one's like, hey, that's kind of strange. These people went camping and never came back. So that was the really strange thing about this. And before we get to that, let me just say I was also injured. My wrist was injured really bad on the trail, and then I jumped into too shallow water on the Arkansas River, broke my first bone. That was 2 years ago, and I'm still basically limping. So these mountains, and the water levels fluctuate and change. I should have gone down and checked the water level, and now I'm going to have arthritis in my leg at the very least the rest of my life. And if anyone wants to watch any of this stuff, like missing hikers that are never found, Brian's On Trail Adventures, and then your good old-fashioned Rusty West. And I don't know if anyone remembers this one. It was this cute couple. I guess this was 2020 in Northern California. They're kind of go-getters, go the extra mile. They hit the trail at 9-10 o'clock in the morning. And, I think that there's natural global warming as well as the man-made global warming. the Anasazi used to grow squash and beans. Southwest Colorado dried up, turned into a desert, and that's what caused all the problems that they had and why they got out of there. But by the time it was noon, 1 o'clock, temperature was up to 110, and no one figured out what happened to them. They decided to keep going on the trail, and there was a clearing where the sun could get through because there was a fire up there, and they should have never kept going. They should have turned back. And their baby and their dog and everything, they're all just found dead on the trail. No one understood what happened to them. They closed all the trails down, but it was a heat wave. This next story is the opposite. This Josh Hall guy is happening right in my backyard, the Indian Peaks Wilderness area. This was went on a hike and started out at 9:30. I thought these trails were closed up there in the Indian Peaks behind Boulder, and I have this wonderful map of the Indian Peaks wilderness. I think I'm going to do a whole video on that. It was done by the same guy who does artist rendition of the ski resorts. This shows hundreds of all the lakes on there. Here's the map actually, and this is just a small portion of it. But he tried to hike all the way up to that Devil's Thumb. His phone pinged around all the way up there. I guess this trail is so popular, maybe the snow was matted down or is dried, but a flash snowstorm hit him. And when that happens, you become snowblind, disoriented. The snow is coming down so hard you can't see in front of you. I guess he lost the trail. And the dog was found 10 days later, like 8 miles away, or 8 days later, 10 miles away or something. And the dog still had the leash on. It's something weird about, but no one could figure out where Josh's body was. And I'm in the chat rooms being like, hey, you want to go out there and look for him? But anyways, it's been 700 hours logged by people. And finally, cadaver dogs found his body in like 5-6 months later, in like August or something, around the Diamond Lake Trail. And his parents wrote a nice vigil saying that he died doing what he loved and he'll always be a part of the Indian Peaks wilderness. So back to these, the mummified hikers. To me, I just couldn't understand. And I guess what happened is finally some lady called in and said, I hope this isn't my 2 stepsisters and their son. And they had limited stuff. And I just don't understand why people would do this. They said, oh, they were getting sick of the world. And so it did kind of end up being like what I was hoping for in a way, like this weird subculture thing. All right, so it's everyone in this photo except for the blonde lady in the middle. The blonde lady is the one who finally called in 10 days later after they found and said, oh, I hope this isn't these people who this was way back in the fall or something, decided they were going to go like several months earlier, decided that we're sick of the world. The lady on the left talked the son, and the other lady, we're sick of the world. And I don't, they used to work on a ranch. I don't understand. And I mean, how sick of the world you can't even tell if they're left or right. We're all sick of the world with the divide that's going on in this country. I can't even tell if they're left or right there. But they decide, oh, we're going to go try and live like Chris McCandless or something. Like I read Into the Wild and I saw the movie, great. It's great. It gives you the spirit of adventure. But when they say that they're going to live off the grid, that is a wrong usage of the word there. That usually means you're going to buy like a plot of land and maybe have solar. And that the Chris McCandless, here he is, he was trying to live what's called living off the land, like the Native Americans did. But you need more than one person to do that. So like skin, and they said he could have survived that moose he took down with his 22 if he had started smoking the meat, or basically he was unable to have that meat not become bad. But he came close to actually living off the land, like the Native Americans did. And a lot of people don't know that he had more common sense, it seems, than these people. A lot of people, even though he did a ceremonial burning of the $7, he had like $180 in his backpack. He wasn't intending to go out there and die like he did. The river swelled up, and we all know what happened. He started eating all these roots and stuff that actually made him starve worse or whatever. By the time he got to the river, now this was back in 1990 or something like that. So this was before overhead maps, where like you could do an overhead map of an area before you go out there and see what's out there. So if he had actually gone up the river a mile, there was a way to get across that hunters had created. And if he had gone 2 miles down, there's possibly a way he could get across. Remember, he was getting weak at that point. I personally think there's a third way he could have got across, which is where you find a place where the river narrows, and then you just swim your heart out to the middle and hope the current gets you to the other side. So, but he decided, he was kind of disoriented, to basically just go back to that bus that he found and dies. And another thing is, I always wondered, how did that bus get out there if he's in such a remote location? And he was in a more remote location than these people were. But what happened is, I guess when they built that road, like to cut timber or something, they hauled back that Fairbanks bus, so the workers would have some sort of shelter in case there was a storm. And then I guess there's been so many people since then that they airlifted the bus, they helicoptered it to some bar, in front of some bar in Fairbanks, because there was too many people going out there. But anyways, great book, Into the Wild, and movie. But who in the world goes up above this campground? It's just like, this is like cult stuff. This is like Marilyn Manson stuff. I'm sorry, I mean Charles Manson. This is like that guy out in Waco who's like, talking people into basically killing themselves. Or that the guy who, remember in the 90s, who like convinced like 100 people to drink the Kool-Aid that killed them so they would jump on the comet that's going by. But I mean, who does this? I mean, look at them. They don't look like they're survivalists. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you could never do that, where you have to suddenly, if you watch these Chris McCandless, they say that he would have had to eat like 40 red squirrels a day. Those little mini squirrels. So, I mean, just buying a bunch of canned goods and going out in the middle of nowhere. Looks like there was a little pond, but I don't even know if they had fishing poles. I mean, talk about. And how can that kid, or how can they just sit out there? I guess they had like 6 or 7 books. How do you sit out there for months? And then you're like, oh, let's just keep going into the winter. I mean, at one point, that's why I'm beginning to think maybe they were like, okay, let's get out of here in a few days. Now it's getting really cold each night. And then a big snowstorm came along or something. And then they tried to huddle around the fire. And then the carbon monoxide from the fire coming in the tent, along with their malnutrition, caused them to knock out. But I don't understand. And also, I mean, what happens when you run out of toilet paper? Were they using toilet paper? I guess they tried to build some sort of bathroom was nearby. How do you keep the fire going like that? I mean, I guess they were down to their last thing of ramen. I mean, this is the strangest thing in the world. And that blonde lady was even like, oh, we have a cabin you can stay at for a while. They're like, oh, no. And the news never reported where their car was. That's pretty weird. And then also, they say they're in a really remote stuff. I looked on overhead map, and here's some structure right here that was only like 2 miles away. How in the world can that 14-year-old kid not be like, my mom and aunt are crazy, we're going to starve to death out here, which apparently is what happened. They starved or froze to death and became mummified hikers of Colorado. So this was a weird one.